It says we're alive again.
Oh, good.
Jolly good. Pinching to make sure.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Welcome to all of our little Tuesday warriors joining us from all over the world. Today we are super excited. I just did a little stand-up at the top of the hour to have carved out a little while in the schedule of the very busy guest we have today by the name of one Miss Antonia Bennett. She lives her life and musical career by Duke Ellington's advice. Number one, never give up. Number two, remember number one.
I like that.
Antonia, of course, you already all know this. She's a jazz vocalist and happens to be the daughter of the legendary Tony Bennett. And she has a distinctive voice of her own that the New York Times describes as a Billie Holliday meets Rickie Lee Jones with a hint of Betty Boop thrown in for good measure. Antonia is also a gifted song interpreter who performs music from the Great American Songbook, as well as her own original compositions. Her mom was actress Sandra Grant, so she has just been steeped in showbiz from the get-go. From an early age, Antonia was immersed in a rich musical environment, often singing alongside not just her father, but mingling with iconic artists like Rosemary Clooney, Ella Fitzgerald, and Frank Sinatra at family gatherings. I'm going to break my back, but I'll pick all those names up. Oh, boy. She pursued a formal training in the arts, also studying acting at the Lee Strasberg Theater and the Film Institute in New York City, and graduating from the Berklee College of Music in Boston. Her professional music career began in the mid-2000s, frequently opening for her dad at prestigious venues around the world. And in 2008, she recorded a duet with him, I Got My Love to Keep Me Warm, featured on the hit album A Swingin' Christmas. Her discography of her own includes the EP Natural from 2010, her debut full-length album Embrace Me in 2014, both produced by famed songwriter Holly Knight, who co-wrote An Emotion for my first husband's Obsession for my first husband's band. There you go. Her vocal style has been described by the New York Times as, well, I said this before, Billie Holiday, Rickie Lee Jones, and Betty Boop. Beyond her musical endeavors, Antonia also has an acting credit, which we'll talk about, with the famous Clint Eastwood. And continuing in her musical legacy, Antonia remains active in the jazz scene, performing at venues like Jazz at Lincoln Center's, Dizzy's Club, and collaborating with artists such as Elijah Rock on projects that celebrate the Great American Songbook. Her newest album, Expressions, will be released just in time for Father's Day. And you can catch her next week on TV on the Tamron Hall Show, as well as a live performance in concert June 14th at New York City's Winnie's Jazz Bar. Please welcome the incomparable Miss Antonia Bennett. Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
Oh, it's lovely to see you after all this long time. Finally, we made it.
Yeah?
Yes.
I know. What a busy gal you are.
When was the last time we saw each other?
Well, it was at Ron Onesti's club in right outside of Chicago.
That's right.
Yes, that was quite an evening. I remember.
I remember the first half of the evening.
Well, yeah, I remember bits of it.
It was great to see you guys. It was such a pleasant surprise. I mean, he didn't know that we all knew each other, and somehow there we were.
Yeah,
wound up in Chicago. I know, crazy.
So now, I wanted to ask you about your musical journey in that legendary household. Can you share your earliest memories of your father, Tony Bennett?
Singing with him?
Sure. Well, there was always music around, and it wasn't just like one thing. It was also, he loved to paint, and so he would paint. He would go into the pool house and paint, and then he would sing along with records that he loved while he was painting. And he would sometimes take this kind of thing that pulled out from his desk that he would use to mix his paints on. And sometimes he would take that when the paint was dry, and he'd pull out a pair of brushes, and he would start playing brushes like over the wooden
like drums
or whatnot. You know, I mean, he was just very creative, and he was also surrounded by, in that time in Beverly Hills, there were a lot of really talented people around, all different kinds, like Abby Mann, who was a great writer, and Cary Grant or Fred Astaire. I mean, these people were either around the house, or I would see them walking to the post office or whatever. You know, they were just, that was that was their town. And at that time, Beverly Hills was still kind of like a small town.
Right.
Yeah.
An enclave. I was driving past the Beverly Hills Hotel on Sunset at the red light once upon a time, and Fred Astaire pulled up next to me in a brown Rolls Royce. And I, being a choreographer and dancer originally, I was gobsmacked. And the light had turned green, and somebody was honking me, and I just sort of went, "Oh my God!" And he just did this little wave and a bow and pointed to the light and went, "Go."
He was so chic, you know. He would always wear like a pair of slacks. And then instead of wearing a belt, he would wear a tie. And, you know, he had that kind of lanky body where he could get away with something like that. And it just looked incredibly cool.
Yeah. He actually, Fred Astaire taught, the woman who taught me tap dancing, learned directly from him. So I was I was just blown away to see him live in person. He was so slight. He was so tiny.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, you know, they say the camera adds 15 pounds or whatnot, or they maybe 10, they say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think he really believed in to always be about 10 pounds underweight. So that when you were on camera, you know, it was different times.
Yeah.
So much body positivity as there is now.
That's right. That's right. So now you've studied both, obviously, with people like Cary Grant around the house, and you weren't going to grow up to be an HVAC engineer, probably. Not that you couldn't have been, but, you know.
Well, you know, I do go from hot to cold on a heartbeat, you know, so, you know, that can
you're not, be like. You're not old enough. You're not old enough yet. Wait till your thermostat really breaks.
Oh, no, I am old enough.
Give it another couple of decades.
Oh, no, it's happening.
Oh, man. So you've studied both acting and music. And so you chose not just Lee Strasberg, but also Berklee College of Music. Which one of those, because jazz is a performance art, it's not just singing and playing an instrument, it's the whole deal, right? Do you think both sides of that education is important for the equation of your career, of where you are now?
I think so. I mean, you know, there was a lot more to it. I also had spent a lot of time dancing as well. I studied with the baby ballerinas, you know, Tanya Lachine, and at that studio at that time in Beverly Hills, it was like all kinds of random people that would like Mickey, you're so fine. I forget.
Tony Basil.
Yeah, Tony Basil would always.
Great.
Would, you know, all the little girls would be there in their pink tights and black leotards, and Tony Basil would be there in some like super 80s outfit with like leg warmers and whatever, doing whatever she wanted. And Tanya, of course, would just like let her do whatever she wanted, like throughout the classes in the back. And we also had people like Alexander Goodenough around. And if Tanya felt like, I don't, you know, at that point she was already kind of older and she didn't feel like teaching, she'd be like, you know, Sasha, you know, you teach today. We were all like terrified of him because he was a really tough teacher.
Yeah.
But I remember like one time at Spago's, at the original Spago's in Beverly Hills. Yeah. And it was my birthday. And, you know, my mom sees him and says, "Oh, Sasha, come over." And she says, "How are my daughters doing in class?" And he says, "This one is lazy and this one never comes to class." And both of us just dropped our forks and we're like,
lovely.
But I think all of those things really helped kind of shape me into the person that I was. I had flat feet and I certainly didn't have a dancer's body. So I think I always knew that if I did go into dance, that it would be either a short career or I was going to be in the chorus. But to me, you know, they had this incredible pianist named Bruno that would play all the Tchaikovsky and all the ballet movements for the class. And we would do sections of different ballets in that class. And I found it so beautiful. And I remember one of my teachers, Irina, saying to me that she said, "You're incredible, like the way that you pull there's so much emotion that runs through you." And, you know, she said, "You would be a great actress." And I always thought that was so sweet. And, you know, and honest from her. And I really took that into all the things that I do. Being inside your body, so much about singing and performing. Any art style, I think, is about like being comfortable in your body, and that can take a really long time to learn. I mean, my dad used to say it takes a performer 10 years to learn how to walk on stage.
Wow.
And I never really understood what that meant until I did.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a very funny thing, but I think a lot of people get very nervous for a really long time, and that nervousness will either propel you forward or it will make you stuck. And you kind of have to just
decide.
Yeah, it's more about like embrace that feeling of like kind of like people who like going on roller coasters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like some people love it and some people hate it.
I can't stand it. But when I was a performer doing my pop thing in Russia and Armenia and such, I could walk out and do an hour show in front of 35,000 people, not bat an eyelid, but you wouldn't get me in a roller coaster.
Oh, well, you know, I wouldn't go on one now either, because now that I'm older, I'm afraid of whiplash. But but originally, I really did like that. So that's the only thing I can kind of compare it to. But yeah, I mean, I guess we all have our ways to relate to it.
Yeah,
that was a very kind way of her saying, you have a career in the arts, but it's probably not ballet.
Yeah, she did say that. I mean, she was Russian. They were not going to like sugarcoat it, because they came from a communist country. I mean, they did need students.
Yep.
But I think she really loved teaching me also, because she saw how much joy I got from being there, you know, and I really did make huge strides and improvements under her direction.
Right.
Now, jazz is such an intimate, emotive genre, isn't it? What drew you to jazz specifically, and how do you make it your own?
I think for me, a big part of it is because I grew up listening to it. You know, I mean, I consider myself more of like an American songbook or adult contemporary or maybe
classic.
like I don't know, you know, than
American
an actual
classics.
jazz singer, but I'm deeply rooted in jazz. And
Yes.
And so, you know, you have to pick these categories now, and then you like,
know.
sure, jazz, okay. But, you know, I grew up listening to everything from Herbie Hancock to Bill Evans to, you know, Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to a lot of different music, and of all different kinds, not just jazz, but jazz for me was something that we always had at home. It was something also that I could really connect with my father with.
Yeah.
And that was really nice that we had so many things in common. Like we both really loved going to museums, and we both liked going to see the same kind of artists perform, or many of the same artists perform. And so that was like a place that we could land and really build a relationship together. And that relationship went on for me. And I went on after college to be his opening act for many, many years.
Yes.
And I learned so much from watching him.
Maestro.
I think, you know, I just had these incredible mentors too that really kind of led me in that direction, like Rosemary Clooney. And she was such a great storyteller.
Yeah.
And I just, to me, I would sit there and watch these people who were family friends. And I was really mesmerized by what they could do. And so I think that's really how it all started for me, is that I really loved watching it and loved listening to it.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me that with the emotional familial connection with your dad and it always being around, it was kind of like your Thanksgiving dinner or your chicken noodle soup or your mashed potatoes, right?
It was my comfort food, and still is. I mean, I still will listen to that record of Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald, the duets record that they did. And anytime I feel depressed, I put that record on because it always makes me feel better. There's no way that I can have that record on and not feel good.
Uplifted. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
wonderful.
well, there is so much music in therapy and music in medicine. We were talking to a guest a few weeks ago about, you know, this scourge of Alzheimer's and dementia, and yet musicians like Glenn Campbell, for example, if you've seen the I'll Be Me film that his daughter Ashley made, it's absolutely stunning that, you know, towards the end, she would take a banjo or his 12-string or whatever to visit him, and she would start Wichita Alignment, and he knew all the chords and all the words and blah, blah, blah. There is a part in the brain that music, as you know, more than anybody, is really,
Reaches,
it's still there, and it still reaches, and it's medicine.
It is. And I think for a lot of these performers, it really is their medicine too, whether it's dementia or whether it's just growing older and feeling relevant. And, you know, I mean, I went to go see probably a month ago, I went to go see Wayne Newton.
Oh, yes.
I saw the picture on your Instagram.
Oh.
And I had never seen him live before. And I was really blown away because he does this thing, how he talks about all the things that he's done in his life. And I really didn't realize that he had done that many things. I knew who he was, and I, of course, knew his biggest hits, but I wasn't aware of just how hard he had been working his entire life.
Yeah.
And you know, it was quite an education.
Yeah.
And I think watching him up there, I really could relate in a way, because I watched my father do this for so many years. It was like he just came alive on stage, and he was really there for his fans. And I could see that for Wayne, he really loves being up there. And I really, to me, that's very moving. I should only hope that I get to be able to sing into my sunset, I guess is the only way to say it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you look at certainly my dear stepbrother and his former bandmate Ringo Starr don't need the money, but they're out there in the 80s doing it because they love it. I think it's their daily routine. If it, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep doing it.
Yeah,
and it brings
absolutely
brings joy to some. Paul Anka is another one. I was listening to him on the Jason Bateman podcast because Paul Anka is Jason Bateman's father-in-law, and he's been working his whole life and writing songs since he was 12. And he's still out there doing it. And why not? You know, if it brings joy to not just the performer, but the fans,
the audience,
it's an absolute win-win.
I think there's a lot to be said for mental health. And when you have something that you really love to do and that you've been doing for so long and it's part of your equilibrium, why would you ever want to stop doing it? If you're lucky enough to have a job that is your hobby,
yes, that's right.
Why would you ever want to stop doing it unless you physically were unable to do it?
Right.
Yeah.
Our friend Ashley is saying, he's in Alabama. He's saying the boards, like the stage boards, are in their blood. It's, you know, it's the old Judy Garland, born in a trunk, right?
Right. I mean, you know, that vaudeville thing, I think, you know, I really feel like my dad always talks about, you know, when he first started out in vaudeville. And I do think that it's kind of like a second generation thing. Like I never was in vaudeville, but I love to work. And I think that a lot of that is because of the way that he was, because what I watched from him, that he just like really didn't complain that much. Even if he had been working 10 days back to back straight in a different place every day, he didn't complain very much. We might all be exhausted and like barely dragging our suitcases behind him, but he was always like, okay, right, straight ahead, let's go. You know? And there's a lot to be learned for that. There's a lot to be said about attitude. I also see it, you know, with my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a Holocaust survivor, and that guy is just incredible. I mean, he goes and goes and goes, and every day that he wakes up, he has stuff to do. He goes on these long walks. He goes and talks to people. He just keeps moving forward, and it's a mentality, right? That you know, some people have that. I think most people who live
in the alternative, I think. Yeah.
Say again.
I always say, people say, when are you going to retire? And I say, well, when they put the lid down on the box.
I get it. My dad used to say, when you retire, that's when you die.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
And I think for a lot of people, it's like that. Maybe not for all, because some people don't have the opportunity to do the thing that they love. And so
Right.
when they retire, then they actually get to do the thing that they
Yes,
love.
that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Well, going back generations, Ozzie and Harriet from the 50s taught their boy Ricky Nelson, who taught his boys Matthew and Gunnar, that show business is not, you don't get paid for the 45 minutes to hour and a half you're on the stage. You get paid for the lost luggage, the canceled flights,
that's it.
sleeping in the bus.
rooms,
That's what
yeah.
you get paid for. The rest of it is just the joy. Right.
The rest of it is the joy. I mean, it's hard being away from your family or traveling. Those things are tricky. And now traveling at airports and whatever is a whole other thing that it never was before. But it's just part of it, and you find your way, and there's a lot of different ways to find a balance with it, and everybody has their own path with that. And I think it's just important to find a way to do the things that you love to do.
It's a calling for sure. I mean, it's like I look at nurses and doctors and I go, how do you do this? They're like, well, it was what I was meant to do. And so there are artistic people, there are EMTs, there are pilots. I wouldn't want to be a pilot. Hell no. But, thank God there are people with callings for all of the things that humanity needs, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to get onto your actual recordings. So on both on your debut Embrace Me and the forthcoming Expressions, which I have played on loop over and over and over, that record, that's my Makes Me Happy record. So thank you so much for that. It is.
Thank you.
Apart from the last song where I cry buckets every time.
I know.
You reinterpret not only your own songs, but some classic standards. How on earth, with so many people like Rod Stewart and Steve Tyrell and the American Songbook and what have you, how do you choose the songs? Is it through an emotional connection or an artistic interpretation you think you can bring to it? Or is it a combination of both?
Are you asking mostly about the American Songbook songs?
Yeah.
It's going to sound terrible, but I don't overthink it. My collaborator that I worked with on this record, and also the Holliday record that I did,
right,
Christian Jacob, I would go over to his house and maybe I had a few ideas in mind, like, oh, what about this song or what about that song? I was really happy to do a Jimmy McHugh song, Exactly Like You, because his grandson is a friend of mine, Lee Newman.
Yeah,
you guys probably know Lee. Yeah. And so I was very happy to do that, and because I love the song and because I love Lee and his family. But I also just asked Christian, because I trust him. Hey, what do you think? Like, what, you got any ideas? And he'd say, oh, what about I think his wife Wilder, who's actually Maynard Ferguson's, one of Maynard Ferguson's daughters, said, what about By Mountain from Chitty Bang Bang? And I said, oh, that's a great idea.
Wow.
And that's and Dick Van Dyke, I don't even know how, he's so old now, but he's amazing. And still doing stuff and just inspiring. It's so inspiring. And so like that. And then, Once I Loved, which is a Joe Beam tune. I think I picked that one, but it was a collaboration. And it was just, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then we picked the keys, and then, Christian would come back to me a week later with a little demos, like, what do you think of these arranged like this? And then I'd say, oh, I like this, or maybe we modulate here. I don't know. It was just very collaborative and easy. But what was difficult about this record was that I started it right before COVID, and then COVID happened, and then everything shut down. And then I kept getting sick. I got like long COVID. Then I got, I just had like respiratory issues and stuff. Then I was trying to come up with the funding to finish the record. So really, I did this record in 3 separate sections.
Oh my goodness.
And so, it And then my daughter was young. And
Yes,
so
sure.
whenever I would go to record, I would do it like within the few hours that she was at school.
Oh, right.
So I would really, and then I had to go pick her up by like 2 o'clock or something. So I would have to leave the studio, which was an hour away at like 1.
Oh boy.
So I was like sleep, so it was the first time that I ever hadn't done a project where I just like went in and did the whole thing,
Right.
you know, and, but I also feel like it was such an incredible snapshot of where I was in my life at that time. And when we got the majority of the record finished, I listened to all the tunes. I said, I feel like we need a few more tunes to round this record off. And then we went back into the studio and recorded an additional 4 songs.
Right.
And then it was so funny because when we did those last 4 songs, it did just flow very easily, very quickly. Everything was done, I think, in 2 days.
Wow.
And, we just did it. And then the next day I came in, I did the vocals, and then we mixed it and mastered it. Then I waited to put it out because I put out a Holiday record. But
Sure.
so, there was all these like strange things that happened. But I do really feel like that record was just a very strong snapshot of where I was in my life. All these different things that had happened. I was a young mom. When I wrote that song, Baby, I'm not Baby, pardon me, See You on the Other Side. I had started going back on the road, and it was so hard to like leave your kid, and even though my husband's so capable, and finding that balance. And, I had really wished that I could speak with Rosemary Clooney, as she had passed some years ago.
Yeah.
But I missed her, and I wished that I could have spoken with her about what is it like. She had all those kids, and she went out on the road and did it, and how did she do it? And I was not thinking like that when I knew her, because I wasn't in family mode yet. And so these people come into your life and they touch you, but you don't even realize how deep until much later.
Yeah.
Well, and your circumstances change. You can't see your future self and say, I'm going to go fast forward 15, 20 years and ask for that advice now. I mean, if we all had that crystal ball, right?
Oh boy.
We'd have all bought Bitcoin in 2016.
Let's not go there.
That's crazy. So I've already talked about the New York Times credit, which I love. Billie Holiday is one of the classic jazz voices.
Yeah, and then Rickie Lee Jones is
fabulous.
An incredible style,
And
but
then
Betty Boop, that's what.
Yeah, where do you think they got the Betty Boop from? And do you consider any of those singers actually influences on you? Do you listen to their music?
It's very interesting because I listened to a lot of Mildred Bailey growing up. And Mildred Bailey is who Billie Holiday listened to.
Yeah.
And I also listened to a lot of my dad. And my dad's biggest female influence was Billie Holiday.
Oh.
And so I did listen to Billie Holiday too, but not until much later. And I remember when I first got to Berklee, everybody kept saying, "Oh, you sound like Billie Holiday." And then so I really started to listen to her a lot more because I wanted to see where the inflections, where it was. And then I realized like, oh, okay, I sound like Billie Holiday because I listened to my dad and I listened to Mildred Bailey, and that's why. But then, you really come into your own, and she was so fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
The way that she would express herself. And so I can see how people would think that I sound like her. And I also have a very childlike element or playful sound. So I guess that would be the Betty Boop thing. Yeah. And Rickie Lee, I mean, she's a tremendous artist. Again, she's somebody I didn't really start listening to till later, but I feel so honored to be sharing. To be compared to her, it's such a compliment.
Yeah. Ashley's just asking, did you, growing up through your dad, did you ever have any connections with Lena Horne?
Oh, well, they double billed a lot when I was a kid, but I was too young to remember.
Right.
But they would do like Westbury and places like that, and Tahoe and Vegas and all of that. And Lena Horne was just tremendous and flawless and stunning.
Yeah.
And her work ethic, from what I understand, was also incredible.
Well, and also in those days, she had 2 strikes against her. She checked 2 cars, right? She was
That's
a woman.
right.
She was a woman and a woman of color. And
Right.
what she must have gone through. Our friend Lisa Tanner's son was one of the executive producers on the Green Book. And, I was not aware growing up in England that whole, I knew there was, apartheid and racism, but I didn't realize on just a day-to-day basis what these poor, not the population, but poor traveling performers had to go through. So, she would have had some tales to tell, I bet you.
Oh, yeah. Like
I'm sure
the venue through the kitchen, not through the front door.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's unbelievable.
It's very sad that it's a big part of our history.
Yes.
Yeah. It is.
But I don't think there's one okay, it's different, obviously, but I don't think there's one musician that hasn't walked through their fair share of kitchens.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, that's true. Now we've all done that. Our friend Elizabeth from back east is saying her dad is 91. He shares a birthday with me, Feb 15th, and he still listens to your dad, and she listened to your dad because of her dad. So it's the gift that keeps paying. Yeah, Ashley's just saying the Chitlin circuit. Absolutely. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
So you take that one.
Okay. So you've played both solo and with your dad all over the world. What are your favorite stories from the road, or a moment that really clings to you?
Or a venue that stands out, maybe, or
I think one of the venues that's very special to me is the Cape Cod Melody Tent.
Oh.
And that's because we would go there year after year. And as a kid, I really kind of grew up there. My dad, at the time, had a drummer with him named Joe LaBarbera, who played on a lot of Bill Evans records. And he had a daughter that was just, I think, a year or 2 younger than me. Her name was Tiffany. And he would bring my sister, myself, and Tiffany up on stage to do numbers in his show frequently in the summer when we were kids. Yeah. And so some of my very early memories are of that place. And there was a funky little hotel across the street that always changed ownership. So like one year it would be a Hilton, the next year it would be a Sheraton, the next year it'd be something else. But it was on a golf course and it was really fun. And a lot of times we would get to see other acts there the night before, like Stephen Eady or whoever was on the circuit, the night before, and George Benson or somebody like that. And that was always a really good time. I would often go there with my dad when he was with the Basie band. And so I would get to like run through the dressing rooms and watch all the guys warm up. And so and a lot of the guys in that Basie band really watched me grow up too.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Ashley's just saying kudos to Tony for double billing with Lena Horne to ensure her position on bills that may have not been possible for her at the time. People like your dad and the Beatles when they found out that their first gig in Florida after doing the Ed Sullivan Show, they went down to Florida and did some gigs in 1964, and they found out that the audiences were going to be segregated, and they said, no, we're not doing it. We're not going on. Not happening. But it took bravery amongst artistry like Sinatra and your dad and folks like that to just put their foot down. And that, I think that, that's an underestimated power of the arts, isn't it? Is in just, music and art can be so politically powerful without having to slap somebody in the face with it.
It's very poignant. And I think that a lot of us take for granted what the generations before have done to make it possible for all of us to be living this kind of higher quality of life that we live now. And even though there's a lot of problems,
Still work. Oh, there's still a lot of work.
There's still a lot of problems that are there to work through, but we have it a lot better than
a lot of countries.
Tell you what else I'm fascinated with. How about your acting?
You had a film role, didn't you?
With Clint Eastwood.
I did have a film role, but it was like one line. And really, that was at the time that SAG and AFTRA were two separate unions. And I wanted to do voiceover work. I wanted to do some voiceover work, and I knew that I wouldn't really be able to get much voiceover work if I didn't have my SAG card. So I called, Clint had just done a documentary on my dad, and I just called him up and said, would you consider putting me in your next film, giving me like one line or something so that I can do this? And he said, sure. And then he had me come in and audition for the part of an operator for The Changeling, and the rest is history.
Exciting.
Amazing.
I got my SAG card, but then now it doesn't matter because SAG and AFTRA are the same. But
that's right, they merged.
Yeah.
So back to venues for a minute, because I think some of these venues are now, like in our world, the Cavern Club and what have you, Hollywood Bowl, they're becoming as iconic as the artists who tread their boards. You've performed at the venue inside the Jazz at Lincoln Center, Catalina's on Sunset in Hollywood, and in a few weeks you'll be back at Winnie's in New York City on June 14th to celebrate your new album release. As you get to each and of course the wonderful Arcada Theater and places like that, as you get to each venue, is it pretty much sort of standard as to where you're gonna, I know we all do a sound check, but each building must have a different vibe and a different feeling. How do you put yourself in all of those spaces and give the performance you want to give without letting the venue take it over?
Well, I mean, Louis Armstrong used to always say that he traveled with two bands, the one in his head and then the one that he traveled with. And I think it's kind of like that. You have to be really flexible, and you have to understand that not every room is going to sound great. Some are going to sound great, some are not. There's going to be problems. And you just have to kind of roll with the punches. And, even when you're lucky enough, when I traveled with my dad, he had the best sound engineer and great people working for him. And really all I had to do is show up, because I knew that they would do everything they could to make everything as good as possible. Yeah. But even under those circumstances, things still happen. And so you just have to look around and pay attention to what things sound like and see what your options are, and then just roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So now jazz is often described as timeless, isn't it? How do you think we can keep younger generations interested and connected to the Great American Songbook?
I think that when you look at the broad spectrum of like the entire world, that there are kids studying this music all over the world. This has now become like our classical music. And it's something that we have. So I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think collaboration is always key. When you have artists like even like what my dad did with Lady Gaga, what she did for the American Songbook is really wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think when you collaborate with different people and all of that kind of stuff, that's really great. Then it brings things more forward in front. But these songs are timeless, and there's always going to be a director that wants to put one of those songs in a movie.
Yes.
I don't think they're going anywhere. Even with AI, I don't think that you can really replace
that.
Now, I think streaming is helping too. I watch lots of documentaries, and there are hordes of them about musicians and background musicians, bands, and
you mean like Netflix and Hulu streaming, not Spotify and
Pandora
streaming.
No, not Spotify. No.
That's a new thing. It's kind of like this generation's behind the music now that we don't really have that anymore.
That's right.
But, it is kind of like that. There's all these great documentaries being made and people are learning. And, in a way, a lot of things are different. Like if you really want to look at somebody's liner notes, you kind of have to dig, because unless you have the actual album,
Vinyl.
but most people don't now. Most people don't even own a CD player anymore.
I know, sad.
I think there was a statistic done. One of the chefs that we work with has a 22-year-old daughter in OSU in Oklahoma City, in Oklahoma State. And all of their dorms and sorority houses, none of them have a CD player, but they all have vinyl record players in the lounge, in the common lounge.
Right.
Area.
Well, it's a new thing.
But
I will say, like, when I travel to Mississippi or South Carolina, people they still want me to sell CDs, which I'm always so in shock with, because when you're in LA or New York, people are not as interested in buying them.
Isn't that funny?
So, but in the middle of the country, they still there's a lot of people who still want that.
Yeah.
And I know for myself, I mean, I listen to a lot of digital or streamed music, but I really enjoy to have the physical, to look at the pictures and feel I like that.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I'm glad vinyl's making a comeback.
I mean, the album cover was a joy, wasn't it?
Oh, and sometimes you got a poster of David Cassidy.
Ooh. Yeah.
And you could stick on your wall or whatever. That's wild. So in case our listeners are thinking you only sort of color inside the lines of the Great American Songbook, you are also an accomplished songwriter yourself. So what comes first for you? Is it the music or the lyrics, or does it just come into your head? Or
I do a lot of collaboration, but I would say that the very first thing that usually comes to me is melody, but it's not always true. Sometimes I might have an idea of a lyric, like one line or something. But then usually the music comes first, like the melody comes first before anything. Usually, sometimes harmony, but usually for me it's melody. And then from there, once I have the form of the song, I can kind of fill in the rest of the words.
Okay, interesting. To me, for me as a songwriter, it's always the title. The title smacks me in the head, and then I build it around that. Okay, from the title, does it need to be up tempo, down tempo, a waltz, or whatever? And I would always just wake up with the title. Kind of crazy.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
A lot of us have to work really hard for that,
No, yeah, well, I had to work really hard for the rest of it, but the title would come in my dreams or fall out of the sky or what have you. But I think, we all spend so much time nowadays chasing our tails and on bloody social media arsing about. I make time to go out in the yard and I just sit still and tune into the universe, because it's like when you tune the knobs through a radio, right? You hear all of these different radio stations from around everywhere, the world. It's all out there. It's all in the ether. It's all in the air. You just have to be still long enough for it to find you, to just let it in.
I think creative energy and music specifically is definitely a different vibration that you can tap into. A lot of people do that through like daily practice or meditation. Everybody has their own way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So Ange wants to know about...
About your band. Do you travel with the same guys all the time?
Who's who and what's what?
Oh, well, I try, no, I don't always travel with the same guys. I mean, I have a few different people that I love that are my musical directors, but it's, doesn't always make sense for me to travel with the same guys.
Right.
And, but sometimes, I mean, I like to always bring people that I know. If it's not a big city, like in New York or in LA,
there's tons of people.
I know, and there's a lot of great people there. Or even Boston. If I was to go to Boston, I probably wouldn't even need to bring a band, really. But it's always nice to at least travel with your musical director.
Yeah,
sure.
I work a lot with Christian Jacob, and I also work with Todd Hunter, who worked a lot with Dionne Warwick and different people. And recently I worked with Andy Ezrin, who in New York, who's great, who plays a lot with Madeline Peru. And, it's also a way to kind of connect with a lot of friends too.
That's right, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it also keeps you on your toes, doesn't it? If you don't have the same routine and the same guys and the same set and the same, it keeps it fresh.
Well, I think it's actually, when you play a lot with somebody, it's great because you can really lock in and then find a way to keep it different all the time. But you have both things. Like sometimes working with all new guys really does help you to have a fresh new take on it.
Right. So next up is the release of Expressions. Next week you'll be on Cameron Hall, and you're going back to New York. You just got back from New York 2 days ago, and you're going back again. How do you balance your career and being a wonderful wife and a good mom to Maya?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring it out. I try, I do my best. I think the thing is that you have to have really good communication with your spouse when you have a family, and you have to really designate time for the people that you love and make sure that everybody's getting their needs met. It's a tricky thing. It's hard, especially because she's not. Now that she's in school, like when she was younger, I used to just pick her up and bring her everywhere with me. Right. And that was great. But now she's in school, and it's homework and
play
routine and all of that. So, I think the way that we do it, or the way that I do it, is I'm not going on long, like 8-week tours.
Right.
I'm going out for 4 or 5 days, and then I'm coming home. Or if I do go out for 2 weeks or something like that, usually it's maybe I bring her out for half of it or something.
Right.
So I mean, there's ways to manage it.
Right. But it's another layer, isn't it?
It is.
You have
But
to be flexible.
None more important than family.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So is there anything we didn't ask you about today that you are dying to tell the world?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I just love talking. I feel so free speaking with you both because you're just lovely people and good friends. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, then we'll just have to.
Yeah, we'll just have to give you a limerick. So you won't know this.
Limericks,
but our regular viewers know that our very special guests get their own limerick. Ange has a book out called Mrs. McCartney's Liverpool Limericks and Other Random Irish Haikus.
Oh, cool.
And so she's aka known around here as the limerick lady. So if you're sitting comfortably, we will let folks that know that you can find Antonia at antoniabennett.com, and also she updates her team updates her Instagram very frequently with shows and the TV stuff and what have you, and that's at Antonia Bennett on Instagram. That's probably the best place to start, and then branch out from there. But I can't thank you enough for finding the time, because I know you just got back and just going again, and you probably have a young lady to pick up in a couple hours. So
that's right.
Places to go and things to do.
Okay.
And so if you're sitting comfortably, we shall go ahead with your limerick. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Jolly good. And a 1, 2, 3. Antonia sings with great grace. In jazz, she has carved out her place. With a voice smooth and clear, like her pops, she brings cheer and gives music her stylish embrace. Ta-da!
You ladies are amazing.
We try.
We give it a go. Well,
sometimes we're more trying than others.
So much. And, we're still in the same spot by LAX. The kettle is always on. And if it's after 5, there's a corkscrew. So if you're coming to go into LAX, let us know ahead of time and carve out a quick drive-by and a cup of tea.
I would love that. We should definitely do that.
We will. Absolutely. Yeah. We're here all summer. We're not going anywhere. All right, sweetheart. Lots of love.
God bless.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.